Namaste, everyone. And I'm guessing people will be joining us as we begin. So we have, I think, now arrived at session number 10 in our ongoing series. We started on a very auspicious date of March 29, and here we are at the end of May, beginning of June. So very happy that we've come so far. And we've heard from, on various perspectives related to the whole theme of art and spirituality. And today we have, after a series of sessions on visual arts, we have somebody from the performing arts, but she's quite an interdisciplinary or rather multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary performing, practicing artist. So she transcends both the performing arts and visual arts territory. So we have with us Krishnapriya Ramamoorthy. She's joining us from UK, Wales, UK. So let me just briefly introduce her, and then it will be Krishnapriya's, we'll be hearing from her. So Krishnapriya is originally from Pondicherry. She has a master's degree in English literature from Pondicherry University, and also another master's in arts policy and management from Birkbeck University, London. And she's currently based in Wales, UK, where she founded, and she's the founder, coordinator, director, producer of a company called Paallam Arts. It's a multicultural arts management company based in Wales, UK. And she has, this fascination with the healing aspect of art, and as well as the values that can be inculcated through arts, both for the performer or the artist, as well as the connoisseurs, those who are observing or experiencing the art. And she has conducted workshops for adults, children in US, UK, and India based on this idea of arts for healing. And we also had an opportunity to invite her once when she was visiting Pondicherry to do a small fun session on dance as movement therapy for people who spend all their days sitting in offices. So it was very fun kind of a session with interesting music, multicultural music, popular music. So we've had that fun with her. So Krishnapriya today will talk about the intersection between art and spirituality, especially in the realm of performing arts and in the context of her work there in UK as well as in India as well. So over to you, Krishnapriya.
Thank you for a very kind introduction. That was a lot, actually. Thank you. And it's nice to meet you all here. So as Belluji said, my name is Krishnapriya Ramamoorthy. So I'm an arts producer and I run the organization Paallam. And few familiar faces with whom I have danced in India when I was there for the break during winter. So moving on to today's idea on discussion regarding is art and spirituality, performing arts and spirituality. So couple of things when we speak about spirituality and performing arts. I have a very minimal slide. Don't be boggled with the slide. I just have a very minimal slide to show. I'll just open that so that we know the idea of what I'm trying to say. So spirituality and performing arts. If I have to go into the idea of spirituality with performing arts, let's speak about dance. And my genre of work is Bharatnatyam, and I am trained in Bharatnatyam for more than 20 years. But the idea of spirituality, or when we say, I strongly believe it can create a social impact. But how this is transformed from a place of, it has come from dance. If you see any form, say Kathak, Odissi, any classical form in Indian perspective, is it okay to throw questions at them, say prompt them? Yeah, okay. So have any of you have exposition to classical art form? Say you have watched it, if I have to ask. Yes? Yes, so you have watched it. And where have you watched it in the present? Say in the span of, let's take 10 years. in the past 10 years or 5 years, if you have watched a dance performance, where have you watched it? You can either type it in the chat, or if you're comfortable, just unmute yourself and just say. Okay, your university. Okay, auditorium at Oroville. Yes, then. Anything else? Any other places that you have watched? TV. Yes, very much. So when we say, so on TV, basically, when we say classical art form, there is either we have to be in, we don't go out of the way to figure out where am I going to go and watch, classical art form. And when I say classical, what is the first word that comes to your mind? Is it spirituality, or it's going to be boring? It is going to be boring. There's no harm in acknowledging it. It is boring at one point of time. But why? The question is, why it is boring? Because we have not taken the form into consideration of how it can be relevant to us in our daily form. It is something very alien to people. It's not something that if I understand it, it doesn't mean that you will also have understood it, like what I'm performing. Even for people who are inside, we might speak different language, but we are all together in India as a continent. But even for us, when we speak about classical art form, it becomes very different, because it's not something that you could connect to right away because of the vocabulary of the art form, from where it has come from and the history of it. So, and also from where you see it, when you see something, even for us, we all wear saris, we all wear heavy jewelry, the way the form is decked up itself, it feels quite alienated. It's not something that you see in an everyday situation. And especially if you're in a college, the first thing that you do, we all do, even when I was in college, the first thing we all do when there is a cultural activity. What is the first show that we put off? Bharatnatyam performance, right? It is not something that we do it at the end. We do it in the first show itself as Bharatnatyam, because we think that is where it stands. There's no way it's placed. Other than, after that, we can have cinema songs, we can have, any fusion, anything we can do. But the first thing have to be classical. Why? Why can't it be anything else other than in the first place? So the art form that the history of the art form that we are trying to understand is spiritual. It has to start here. The understanding of this art form have to start here. And then it will delve into spirituality, because performing art is not easy like you have a visual art, because visual art is, the output is there where it is physical, it's tangible, and it's just there. You leave it in the canvas today, it will stay for 10 years. There is no change. It will never change. Whereas performing arts is not like that. I get older by the minute. So today I will do a piece where it's best of my capacity. Whereas if you ask me to do a piece, same, everything is same, but I am not the same as I am today, tomorrow. It will change. Performing art is transitional. It will transform from person to person. And that's why there's the capacity of a dancer, the change of a dancer from how you perceive a piece, how you do a piece where they do a lot of technical piece, they'll do when they are too young, very young, between 40s, from 20s to 40, if you see a dancer dancing, it will be very technical. Everything would be very clean and neat. After 40 or 50, when the body gives in, they might take it a bit slow and do something different. So it's not a problem, but the conversation around that we have to think about is, what is it that we are trying to understand in terms of spirituality and performing arts? Because the first space itself, we don't have an access or an exposition to performing arts, even in our own country. We don't get that access where, okay, Friday night, let's go and watch a Bharatnatyam performance. We don't do that. We don't say, let's go and watch a Odissi performance. And we don't have that capacity, the knowledge, if I have to say, where that inquisitiveness of how this person is dancing like this. What is the amount of training that this person is putting in before it goes out to the stage? You all must have participated in a school cultural show. Till that cultural show is there, the whole college or the school, wherever we are, the whole country, the whole school will be running behind that one event. Rehearsals from morning till evening. And everything, you'll be fried in the sun if it is a whole school involvement. That is how the life of a dancer is throughout. Morning till evening, that's how they run around. And it's not just one event, it's their life. And the repercussions of it is there's too much that the dancer gives in to the process itself in order to put out a show. But the idea here is when we speak about spirituality, it's the dancer that's one and the audience that's two. There's two ways the spirituality works here. Because the dancer can just by like themselves dance and feel because of their training, because of the literature that they are expressing, they can feel spiritual. But what about the audience who are on my other end? How do you feel the spirituality? How does it translate? How does my dance translate to you? What should I do to convey my spiritual experience of what my body is doing to you? And how do I make you feel it? In the first space, it's a challenge because you don't sit and watch me for 40 minutes. You watch me for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, how do I have to capture your experience itself? It is a challenge. It's challenge everywhere. This is the challenge when we speak about performing arts and spirituality. It's only the dancer can speak about it. But the other end of the audience, very minimal audience will feel it because they give that time to sit and watch a full-fledged 1-hour show or even a 30 minutes piece. Yes, and we'll have to think about how do we educate, because I understand from what I read very little of Sri Aurobindo's work. He talks about how schools have to talk about traditional art forms, how the curriculum have to be changed from a westernized perspective to a very Indianized way of understanding traditional culture and traditional art itself. And especially when it comes to performing art, you don't have to go out of the way to explore this. If it is part and parcel of your school curriculum, and I'm for sure everyone in our schools would have learned about Bharatnatyam, any one art form, either it can be Kathak or anything in schools. But what happens after school? What happens during our college days? What happens during our university days, where we are in a prime time, where our body is really in the prime time to equip ourselves with that kind of an expression? That's where we are trying to fail miserably, because we don't have that exposition. We don't read about dance. We have to read about aesthetics. We have to read about dance more. So to give you a glimpse of where to go around, if you have not watched Bharatnatyam anywhere in this periphery, how do you think about having a Bharatnatyam dance form, since you don't know where the conventional idea of Bharatnatyam comes from? So it's okay to ask you, how do you feel if a Bharatnatyam is performed in an open space? Will it make a difference to you? Say in a garden per se. Will it make a difference to you? There is no right or wrong answer in this. Because me and my work is all about questioning the social justice. If Bharatanatyam, what is the barrier that dance had formed over the course of time? One of my main work, which I am working currently, would be the questioning of, can dance be away from, can it have a civic purpose, if I have to put it? Can Bharatanatyam have a civic purpose? Unfortunately, in an Indian situation, it can't, because of the structure of the art form and the history that comes in with it. But there's also another group like we are having, where the exposition to the art form itself is a problem because of the access or knowledge that comes with the art form. Because it's always felt that it's not there. or there's not enough things, it doesn't come into the mainstream curriculum itself. If it is a part and parcel, if performing arts or any art form is there as a part and parcel of your curriculum, you would have more knowledge about the conversation that we can have during performing arts, how dance has been a part of people, or how you can have that intellectual conversation about dance itself. So Kiran ji has said yes. So from a guard, it will not be any problem, because the conventional setup of a Bharatnatyam performance in a garden or a studio will not make any difference. So all you have to, I'll give you a brief idea of where this Bharatnatyam had come from, a brief history about Bharatnatyam had come from. So Bharatnatyam is the form Bharatnatyam is come from the oldest art form, which is called Sadir. And from Sadir, the oldest generation of artists who is living at the moment, she's around 85. She is Virali Malai Muttukannammal, who has been recently been acknowledged for her work and resilience with Bharatnatyam award last year. So she is the last living legend of Sadiratam. And Bharatnatyam had come from Sadiratam. It's not Bharatnatyam way back if you take the century of history ago. It's not Bharatnatyam, it is Sadiratam. So from Sadiratam, when Bharatnatyam came into existence, it was a popular art form. It was an art form which was praised by people of accessibility, people from upper class. And the art form of Sadiratam is only coined by people called as Nattuvanas. Nattuvanas are none but people who will give the beats. So when Nattuvanas were the key of these, and where the Sadiratam groups were there is, they were temple people. They lived in temple. So when we say temple, they were not treated in the temple as anything other than people who will be part of the worship in the temple, people who will wake up the deity in the morning, have them for a procession in the morning. Those kinds of activities were done by these dancers. And if there is anything in the temple, these dances were given the first priority to either, it can be in terms of, giving them a plate of sari and, respecting them for their work in the temple. And they were given lands, and it was not monetary support. It was a assert that comes with the temple thing itself. So where they were given land and where their accommodation was sorted, so they could, they could grow something in the land and they could sell it and make money, because teaching dance was not a parcel of their lifestyle itself. But when colonization came into existence, when colonization happened, these dancers are dancers who had their right to choose, either they get married or they don't get married. But when colonization came, when the British came into existence, what they felt was they transformed this whole idea into prostitution, where they said, this has to go away because this is something not good. And the problem here is the art form has if you see the whole repertoire of performing art, especially Bharatnatyam, it has a very strong vocabulary where it is women sings and dance in Sadiratam. In Bharatnatyam, women don't sing and dance, whereas Sadiratam, women were able to sing, articulate, and then dance. Imagine the lung capacity of a woman who's singing and dancing the same thing. It's too much. It was too much. And the expression was also, these are talking, the period that I'm talking is when the Zamindar system was in vogue. So when the Zamindars come for temple, these are Zamindars who were their patrons. So they have to sing in praising the patrons. So these are erotic, Shringara Rasa, if I have to say. These are very erotic. And Britishes in a Victorian mindset felt it's not, women can't do this. It's not right for a woman to be this erotic in expressing these kinds of stuff. And so there has to be something beyond their understanding. So what they did was, they started with the idea of it has to go away. So E.V. Iyer, who comes from a very upper class, who was working with the governor at that point of time, they started the Muthulakshmi Ammal and E.V. Iyer were the in the 1950s, they were the first people who started saying that this system have to go away from the temple because it's equal to prostitution. So, in fact, every temple, Tanjore temple, Viralimalai temple, they had most amount of cohorts in the dances. So, Tanjore temple had somewhere around 15 dancers from Sadaratam, whereas the Viralimalai had somewhere around 32 dancers. They are not teachers. They are just dancers who dance only in the temple. They know nothing else. So they came off. They were literally left with nothing. They came out of the temple and they don't know where to go. So what they did, so the Natuanas, and they would usually go to temple festivals from the local villages around. So when this system was abolished, the upper class came into existence and said, you teach us, you pass on, you teach us the dance form and we'll take it. So that's how the Kalakshetra Foundation of Rukmani Arundel came into existence, of reviving the art form. And they revived it in a way where it is taken from something else and they formed it as Bharatnatyam. And the form itself is too distinct. They sing and dance, they don't sing and dance. There's a lot of, layam, if I have to say, there's a lot of twists and turns when it comes to Sadaratam. You can move your hips and all that. Whereas Bharatanatyam is very to the core. You stand in a certain way and all that. But they have taken that idea behind from Sadaratam, and the erotic idea of a Javali or the literature which we have in Bharatanatyam itself would talk more about what the songs are very, very erotic. Either it is Ashtapati for that matter. If you have read Ashtapati from Jaidev, it is erotic. So what they did, they wanted to give a spiritual idea to the literature itself. And that is a westernized idea and not a very Indian idea. So the Western idea had come into existence and they said, no, just have, the bhakti rasa to it. And everything becomes easy with the bhakti rasa. And you can romance God, any God for that matter, you can romance God. And you're not romancing a real person there. He's not a patron. He's not a jamindar there sitting. And so that's how this whole idea behind the expectation of spirituality with art had come. And moving forward, there's another, this just transforms into the idea of how the Sadaratam then evolved into Bharatanatyam, and then we are performing Bharatanatyam only. Very few schools do teach Sadaratam. One school, if I have to say, in Chennai. But these dancers, when you call it the spiritual idea behind performing arts, now you will understand how the westernized influence of performing arts have come into the performance itself. It's the Indian idea of performing art, the spirituality is, it's the body, it's the mind of how you acquire something. Whereas the Western idea of spirituality is something very far-fetched. You have to be, larger than life, where you have to think about something else. Whereas an Indian idea of spirituality is very different from the Western perspective of spirituality. And that's where the understanding have to be there when it comes to dance. And this is a very brief history. There's more to the history. This is just a brief history. And if you are interested about to know the work of Muthu Kannamal, she's still alive. She's at Viralimalai. There is a place called Viralimalai, so lives there. She lives there with her family, and she still teaches dance. Even at 85, she can literally teach dance well, even at 85. But that said, spirituality in a Western, we are speaking spirituality in a Western idea. But if the performance per se is not viable to you, you only watch a 10 minutes performance in a school or a college, how this can translate to you? How do you feel the performance? What is the body that we are doing? So when I keep saying spirituality over and over again, and if I have to say the words of Sri Aurobindo of what performance or spirituality is, so this is what his idea of spirituality is. So I'll just read what he says and then we'll delve more about it. Spirituality is a wider thing than formal religion. And it is the service of spirituality that art reaches its highest self-expression. Spirituality is a single word expressive of 3 lines of human aspiration towards divine knowledge, divine love, joy, divine strength, And that will be the highest and the most perfect art, which, while satisfying the physical requirement of the aesthetic sense, the law of formal beauty, the emotional demand of humanity, the portrayal of life and outward reality, as the best European art satisfies these requirements, reaches beyond them and expresses inner spiritual truth, the deeper, not obvious reality of things. The joy of God in the world and its beauty and desirableness and the manifestation of divine forces and energy is a phenomenal creation. So he thought, reading this, I only felt it's correctly he had said the Western idea, the European art, it satisfies it. The Western idea of spirituality will satisfy you in everything because it has a civic role. Whereas an Indian idea of dance or anything, even visual art, we don't have a civic role or civic aspect of social value attached to art itself. Because our art forms are very different. Our arts are not, if I have to say, it is part and parcel of our lifestyle itself. It's not an alien work where we have to go out of a normal structure where we have to go and pursue it. Traditionally, if we have to speak of Indian art form, afternoons, most of our households, we would have long back when we had floors. The grandmothers used to sit and put rangoli on the ground itself, on the floor itself. Or they used to do, some kind of a crafty activity where the art was part and parcel of the lifestyle. It's not something that it was never a way of, other than until you need a guru to teach you, though other than those kinds of art form, there was an art in our way of life itself. But when we speak about performing arts and spirituality, performing art, in my brief also I wrote about what performing art is, how performing art can be ephemeral. It is very short-lived, the spiritual experience. So when a human being, when I watch it, when I dance or when I am watching a performance, I always feel that it has to change me. A performance have to change the person who's watching. Yes, it is transformal. It has a very different experience for a dancer, but the dancer knows whether that is cracked. That the language that they are talking is it's translated to the audience at the other end. But going forward, when you watch any performance, see that something in you triggers. If the performance triggers you, some kind of it ignites you in some way where you can think about something has happened and it's just more joyful than anything else. And I'm not sure whether you have watched enough performance to trigger that idea itself. So next time when you get an opportunity, a performance, say theater performance, dance performance, when you watch it, you don't have to understand the history or the knowledge of any form of this. All it has to trigger you is, and that it doesn't mean that it should trigger you, no. All you can do is, as mother says, you have to be open to the energy that comes in, especially during birthdays when we go to darshan. I remember mother's words, you have to be open enough to receive the energy which comes to you. So that is how you have to approach performing arts, because it is a two-way giving. Performing arts is not a one-way, I do whatever I want to do on the stage and I get out. No, it can't work like that. Because at the end of the day, unless and until we have an audience to watch, performing arts can't thrive. Visual art is not like that, whereas performing art is a two-way process. So when you go for any kind of performance next time, either stand-up comedy is something that we all love, but that's an interaction. Whereas dance is not an interaction where I dance and you will have to sit and watch. You don't have, it's not a communication. The communication is very internal for us. We do communicate through the work that we do, but it's very, very internal. So when you watch a performance, be open enough to understand what is this conversation all about. And we are not still there in terms of performing art itself to explore more of literature. We are still, in that phase in India where the literature is more about speaking about poems and things that is not viable for everyone to understand, but it's okay. But dance is dance. You can have that conversation slowly, where if you're open enough to understand it, maybe it will trigger that spark in you. But I will open the floor for questions. I want to know what would be your idea behind, since you all had said with a very little exposition to performing art itself. So I do have one question saying that, but by having a civic purpose, will a dance form like Bharatnatyam lose the intrinsic essence? Not at all. So a civic purpose is what is the question. So what do we think about when I say civic purpose? What is that we are thinking about? I will say in an Indian perspective. So a civic purpose is, what is a social impact? Let's see this way. You come and watch a Bharatnatyam performance and it has to trigger something in you, and then you go out and you come back to me again. But it's not about just triggering something. It has to make you think. It has to make you think in terms of my performance and the questions I ask, so that you think that this is possible in performance too, so that next time when you come to the performance, you'll see, okay, what is that they are doing? Going to do something new this time that's going to trigger that conversation itself. If I only dance, the same thing with Varnam and Tillana and all that, the question will be there, but it would be a structured question. Whereas if I have to ask you, if I have to have a civic purpose of making you think more than what I am thinking of, that will make you come back to me more. So it will only add more value to the work I do. It will not lose the intrinsic. In fact, that will give me a scope of exploring more with my form itself. So that's my understanding. Please unmute yourself and ask. I know you're all very good at listening. Go ahead.
No, I asked that question specifically because, sometimes there is that activist streak that comes in our artists, especially, in contemporary. And I think one of the things like Kiranji and I have talked about, that in this discourse, in these series of discourses, we don't want to only stay confined to what Sri Aurobindo said of the idealistic, vision of art, Indian art, because we are living in times, as you said, with all these influences that have shaped our contemporary times. So we want to bring out these things. So the reason I asked that question is because I remember going to a performance several years ago, I don't know, maybe almost 10 years ago at one place in Auroville itself, where this artist, she did a classical piece in the beginning. And then towards the end, she became like her activist self came out. It seems like she did some kind of sort of like a fusion piece on, civil rights, inter-religious rights that had happened in Gujarat 10, 12 years back. And it seemed, she was trying to convey the pain, but she talked about the stories that she had picked up from the headlines, which themselves were very biased. If you do a little bit of research, you would know, because those stories were thrown out immediately, that they were like, not even correctly reported, misreported facts. So based on her biased research or whatever, she tried to arouse emotions in the audience. But, and that's where my academic self came out, that what am I watching? What am I experiencing? It's not even, okay, if I have to even go by facts, it's not even factual. Forget it, an artist has the creative liberty to take, whatever piece of information she wants to take and express it. But at the same time, the emotional reaction that she's expecting me to have are also not sincere, because back of my mind, I know it's not correct. So you see, there was a major, you said something about communication. There was a communication happening, and yet I wasn't willing to receive it because I didn't feel that that was authentic or genuine. But it was done more to arouse certain kind of, not even emotions, sentimentalities, I guess. So I
completely agree with you, because for me, when I watch performances a lot, I only travel to watch performances. So when I recently, a couple of, I think last year, when I watched a performance, it was consuming me way beyond. It's like it was a contemporary and a Bharatnatyam together. And I understood the piece, but the contemporary of it was too consuming. When I say consuming, is like I was in a feeling where I am dancing, and it was too much too for my personal experience itself. I After some point of time, I was like, enough, just stop the show. It's too much for me, and I couldn't even take the performance after some point of time. I went into the technical aspect of, okay, how many tickets have been sold? Okay, how much is the, because I couldn't even take what they're communicating after some point of time. I went to the technical aspect of managing the show. So there are few performances like that. But at the end of the day, there is a line that we, as as an audience and as a performer, there's a line also that one has to draw. So this is actually, think about this as people of power and people, as a commoner, where the people of power keep putting your ideas on something, and that they're receiving and you are receiving. But you have the time to, to draw that line where you say, okay, this is not something for me, but I like it. But I'm okay with it, but I don't want to delve deep into it because this is not the thing that I approach it this way. But that's a healthy way of taking it too. So, because that conversation can only build on. If you just block it, it just stops it there. There's no time to grow. Like, in fact, if you have had a conversation with the artist itself and said, see, your research is fine, but just think about it in this way more. And that would have given them the more idea about how this research can be more. Because every research will go inside saying that, okay, the end result, this is what I want to do in the research. That's how we all go into research, right? We want to know, we want to say, okay, pain is the only thing that I'm going to show in this. That's how a performance also will go. But mostly for me, I would be like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing with this production, so let's do this and see what's coming out. So, and what comes out would be totally different from what none of us have thought about it. So it's always better to have that conversation and draw that line in between, because that is where you are not too much consumed into a language where you're not familiar with. And they, as an artist, also can communicate with the audience and have that, communication two-way, where that becomes something else too. That's very important in a performance, because it can't be, I want to tell this story, so I'm telling it. No, it can't be like that. Okay, good, you're telling a story. Yes, we are telling a story, but we need to listen to another end of the story too, especially when it comes to these kinds of activist ideologies.
Krishnapriya ji,
yes, Kiranji.
Beautiful way of narrating your experience. There are a few points which I really appreciate in your talk. One is that the audience should have opening, then that they can connect with the dancer or artist. That is one thing which I really like that.
Thank you.
Second thing, the observation what I have is, it is my way of looking at the things. When we are talking about performing art, I'm not just focusing on the classical dance only.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the all performers, artists. They are singers, or they are folk artists, or so. When Beluji was talking about civic purpose, she questioned. So if you see, the folk artists also bring the essence of spirituality, though they are, for example, Garba.
Yes.
Sometimes, though Garba right now it is a commercial, but Garba is done in such a way in some villages, interior villages nowadays I can talk about, in such a way that actually it transport you some in a different world altogether.
Yes, I agree.
And then second is, if you have heard about Tijan Bai, she takes one iktara and she sings, and she some the storytelling, the way she tells the story, it is something beyond it is simple in a different language, but we get connect with Tijan Bai's performance so beautifully. So that is second thing. If you listen to Kaushiki Chakravarti, when she starts with that Ajana Bhagwan, you feel like, okay, God will certainly come down. You feel that, that kind of feeling. So what I feel, that artist herself or himself transport during the performance, in that
yes
zone, then I'm sure that the even audience will feel that, that will communicate the transformation, transport comes to the audience also, and they can take audience also to certain zone. For that, I think artist does not have to bother about what, what audience is thinking. That is the stage. It comes very later on. That is what I have experienced. I don't want to name that artist, very renowned dancer. I heard from her mouth because it was in informal talk. She was telling that, many people fall in love with her because she was dancing on the stage. And she got divorced twice. So somebody asked her that why it happened that, people divorce and you are living single. She said they fall in love with the dancer, not me. And whenever, I dance, they forget that who that person is in. So she becomes a character when she does that, Radha or any other performance. So basically, what I have understood from your discussion is, when there is a Veeras, we feel the Veeras. When there is a, Karunaras, so we feel Karunaras. Because all dance, all songs that make us experience, that makes audience experience that particular ras which the artist wants to, feel or is in that zone. So that is what I have, I have understood from your discussion, that it is very important. And second thing is, whether it is a stage or whether it is open space, when the artist is in the zone, when that dedicated person is in zone, because online platform has created something wonderful. I heard Mati Bani. I don't know whether are you familiar with that singer. So Mati Bani, that girl, I forgot her name, young girl. She Karpura Gauram Karanavataram. She sung in a very different, note, not like the way when we pray to the God. And she invited different artists from different, state online, and they performed. Possibly, I'll just Google it right now and I'll share with you. And you believe me that even that was online, I felt, wow, it is like, I felt the same spiritual feeling. I mean, I cannot express, but I felt, wow, it is still, it has that essence that it is a Karpura Garam when we sing it, in front of temple. I felt, wow, this is exactly transformed. So sometimes space does not matter. Sometimes, even we forget the words also. We don't understand the language also. How artist is communicating, how artist has got transformed and transported herself or himself. And then whatever we are seeing, that is simply spiritual. And I do not doubt that, that artist can take audience also with him or her. That is what I've experienced.
One thing to add to that is in the term of space. So the idea of Instagram, Facebook, social media, where the performance is being, you develop a performance for content per se, has been more. And as you rightly said, this is ephemerality. It is a short-lived experience, and space plays a very vital role. And especially for performing arts, it can only be triggered through live performance. If I have to say, for example, any music for that matter, when we all listen to YouTube or any other sort of music in Spotify, we all get goosebumps. So that doesn't mean that the music is spiritual. No, that's where that music, you connect to that music in somewhere. Whereas the performing arts, what we actually want with the performing arts is, it is that communication where can only be done in a closed space. And more than a closed space, the idea of performing arts have come into a vogue of it is a black box performance, or it is the way the gallery is set up. It is just because the performance can't be you can't be having 1,500 seater and then, you can have a performance and say, oh, this is what the performance have to be. No, the Bharatnatyam performance have become, any classical performance have become in a way where it is very intimate. And if it is very intimate, then your experience is also, very intimate. But if it has to be beyond that, and if it is, say, 1,500 seater, what they'll do is it's not just the performance. There'll be LCD TVs around the show itself, around the stadium itself, so that you can watch it and you can enjoy it. That's an experience and nothing to do with the space itself. So there's two ways that we deal with the idea of performance and space. And with any expression that's translated, say, if I have to record what we are speaking, and then when we watch it back then, it's a very short-lived experience of what we are, communicating. So when we record it and keep, after 10 days, when we see it, it wouldn't create the same vibe of what we are all feeling it now. That's with the performance that is very important. When we just record it, that's what Instagram and Facebook are doing. So for us, when we dance on Instagram, on Facebook, and have it there, that recording becomes, that experience is just captured there, and it's just bottled there, and it's just captured there. Whereas performance are not supposed to do that, because you have to feel it, leave it there and go out, and then when you come back, it has to be new. Whereas you can't just go back and watch the same thing again and again and feel the same thing. No, it can't be like that. Every time when you watch it, you have to have a new experience. That's where the experience have to be. Whereas when you bottle these experiences and keep, it becomes, after some point of time, you yourself, you don't want to experience this. You're like, yeah, I've heard enough. It's like, repeating the same music again. And you're like, yeah, I've heard it 1,000 times. I don't want to listen it again. That is not we want with the performing arts, because performing art is very, very temporal. You'll have to be like, today it will be something else, tomorrow it is something else, because we are working with an undeniable fact of body. So body today is something, tomorrow is something. So that's where the space also plays a very powerful idea behind it. So we can't bottle it, and we can't say we experience it. It has to keep changing.
Yes,
I think.
definitely. I wonder if anybody else had any comment or question. Okay, yeah. Yes, go ahead, Kiranji. Go ahead, please.
No, I think what I would request Krishnapriya ji, that when we are talking about performing art, we would like to see your performance.
See also, okay. Definitely next time.
Yeah, whenever you are ready, some action, your hands start speaking and your eyes start speaking. It makes a whole lot of difference. So we'll certainly, request you to do that.
Definitely.
Yes. So I think it will be very nice to kind of like just see a small story.
Piece.
Because small piece, because what I also really liked in your presentation was the history behind Bharatnatyam. You focused on Bharatnatyam, but that is probably true of many of these classical dance forms. I mean, they were all.
If I have to give you an idea of Kathak, that's where the Notch artist came into existence.
Yes.
The history of Notch artists. So
Yes.
that's there in Odyssey also.
Yes.
So
yes.
Every classical art forms has the same history. I'm speaking about Bharatnatyam because I've read a lot about it. But even Kathak has the same history. The Notch dancers have come from the same, the courtesans, where they were in the courts of Mughal empires, and then they transformed into dancing in anywhere and everywhere, from roads to other places too. So it's the same history that being translated.
True, yes. And I think that's what is so interesting about Indian art forms, Indian performing art forms, that even, I mean, the idea, as you said, Indian view of spirituality is very different from the more conventional Western spirituality, where it often gets confused with morality also. But here it was a very all-encompassing, life-affirming every part of the being. Through body, you can offer prayer to the divine, and dance was the prayer. These dancers were offering their prayers to the divine. So to look at it from that Victorian morality perspective, and and then force fit eroticism into spirituality. I mean, that part was also very interesting. Except that Jayadev's poetry was, I mean, again, there was a certain time, how Sri Aurobindo explains in his other writings, where certain, in the bhakti movement itself, where these lines between what is human love and divine love got really, blurred in that sense, in a positive sort of way.
Yeah.
Human
it's very
love
positive.
means to, yes, to experiencing the divine love. But again, from a more conventional, westernized spiritual perspective, we will not see it like that. So,
No,
I mean, I appreciate your bringing that point up.
In fact, Westerners can't take the fact that, because I learned Ashtapati and I was completely shocked. I was like, oh my God, we'll have to go way back to how we've been educated at that point of time, and how education system was there, how we were all learning, how people back then, the Gurukula system, or what was being taught with family and friends, how temples have been come into vogue with statues and everything. And reading about Jayadev poetry itself was like quite a revelation. I was like, okay, it's not something that out of ordinary, because nowadays when you speak about education or, Shringara Rasa itself, it's quite, very, it's fancy, I have to say. The love between a man and woman, it's very, very romanticized. Whereas a Shringara Rasam is like beautiful. It's like you can see from a normal life to how do you, romance a man and a wife, a girl and a boy. And that you can see in Shakespeare's literature more. That you can see, and that is there in our literature more. When you take our literature, you can see how the romance has been there throughout. And it's quite shocking when Jayadev has written it in a way. I remember the last pose when a dancer was the choreographer who asked us to do a last pose with Krishna standing, and we have to literally look up to Krishna and literally look up to him. And Radha is down and Krishna is up and look up to him like this. And the sense itself, I was like, this is a very, very erotic pose and you want to give this on the stage. So she was like, do it, because you're a dancer, you're an actor at the end of the day. So do it. And it has to convey to the audience. And she convinced us in a way that we do it, the pose itself. But it's the Radha and Krishna love is with the Jayadev poetry it's way beyond the comprehension of a human mind. And it's, if you see it in terms of spirituality, you can speak volumes about it. And how the Western see it, they can't tolerate these kinds of things in paper. From my understanding, they can't tolerate this. It's this in your literature, and it's not just the Jayadev poetry. Any poetry, if you take even beyond, before those kinds of, Sangam poetry or anything, the wordings in between the lines, you have to read in between the lines, and dancers have to read in between the lines in order for the expressions to evolve. And with maturity, most of us are married and we know what we are expressing, what we are thinking. You have to express it on stage. And I felt it convincing, because this is with joy. It's like, you feel whoever you're thinking, either it can be Rama, Krishna, any name of the God it can be. But that's where the idea of convincing the other end of feeling that love is more important than whom I'm romancing is not important. Feeling that love on stage is more important. As an actor, as an artist, you can even romance a pen. But at the end of the day, the idea of romance, idea of rasa is more important. It can be Shringaram, it can be Bhakti. Even for people, I've known few dancers, whenever they do a Shakti piece or anything, they will cry. And the minute they start crying, the audience will also cry. It's just that, a single moment of communication, but they will cry. So that is there. And Westerners, the Western idea is very, very different. And we'll also have to understand the Western idea of faith to understand where the spirituality comes from. Because when we say West, we are not speaking about faith in terms of religion. There's a very conflict of idea of religion. UK has a separate faith, US has a separate faith, and there are families who don't have any faith at all. So where does spirituality stand for them is a question. So as Indians, when we speak about art forms in terms of spirituality, we have a very strong foundation of faith. Either, religiously or non-religiously, we have a very strong understanding of what we are thinking in terms of faith. And that's where our spirituality lies in the work that we do, the belief system we believe in, and the poetry that we read, the literature we get exposed to. There's so many things that our faith becomes stronger every time of the day with the news that we read. And there are so many things. That's not the case with the West. Since I've been working with children here in terms of faith and culture and all that, I can strongly say that no, it's not the same way we can deal with people here in terms of spirituality. It's very different. Whereas for us, we from the time to time when I speak about spirituality, you will understand what I'm speaking about spirituality. Whereas here, I have to break down the idea of spirituality itself and then talk about what I mean in spirituality. From my understanding, you would understand my spirituality lies in dance and my faith lies in dance and performing arts. Whereas here, I have to make myself very clear before expressing it itself. And they wouldn't understand the aesthetics behind it. They understand the literature behind it. It's word to word. So it's two different worlds itself when it comes to spirituality. And we can't take a Western idea and put it in India because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, Western, I think, yeah, Krishnapriya ji, I think you put one very important aspect which helps me, rather which stimulate me to study what actually West think about spirituality, because I feel that spirituality, whether it is East or West, the word spirituality itself is very different. Maybe I think when it comes to religiousness, it's very different. But spirituality is, I'm just thinking aloud in a way. Yes, the concept of spirituality can be different. The concept in the sense, for example, the way we live our life, or whatever the performances we are saying, not all, in which we describe our spiritual power or spiritual concept. I'm just trying to connect with what actually how Western minds think about spirituality. That is the different story. We have very different story because our complete life is in a way spiritual, based on spiritual aspect, not religious aspect. Whereas Western life has phases, not like spiritual aspect. For that you have to, I think, for example, if I have to believe in spirituality, I need to be Christian, or I have to follow certain religion. But here, even if you are Krishnapanthi or Shiv, anybody, I mean common, even in my house there are a number of gods are there. Nothing, nobody defines. My religion and spirituality is very different. So when you are talking about Western spirituality and Indian spirituality, I feel spirituality is universal, I feel. And but yes, the concept of understanding of spirituality is different. That is what my submission is. What do you say, Beluji?
I think I kind of find that there is truth in both what you are saying and also what Krishnapriya is saying, based on what I understand and what I have experienced, again, having lived for many years in the West, and then especially now steeped in Sri Aurobindo's view of spirituality, or the purpose of spirituality, which is to transform, the idea of self-knowing, self-awareness, self-mastery, and then self-perfection and transformation, not just of yourself, but transformation of the earthly life. If this is what Sri Aurobindo's yoga is all about, I think in that sense, there is some truth to what Krishnapriya is saying based on what I have seen. And you are right, Kiranji, that there is this idea that spirituality is in the context of a certain religious belief system, primarily in the West. But even those who are sort of a-religious, not irreligious, but a-religious, or who want to call themselves agnostic or atheist or whatever, who may say in the West that we do believe that there is some sort of higher intelligence, supreme, they won't call supreme being, but some supreme energy, supreme force that is working behind all the creation that we see, they will still keep it somewhat separate from the material existence. So, but in the Indian, you know, I think those Indians who call themselves agnostic and atheists, I think they try too hard to be agnostic and atheists in the Semitic Christian sense, because knowingly or unknowingly, there is something in the Indian DNA, because it's so much out there in our outer life that everything is, we start with spirit. Everything is it's an expression of something beyond. Even the words, even the poetry. I mean, she was talking about Jayadev's poetry or any other poetry. But we have talked about, as Vladimir was talking about, the 4 stages of that speech, from para to Vaikari. Everything there is something behind this, something beyond that. Whether we know it or not, unconsciously, subconsciously, we have absorbed that in. So if we try too hard, we just stay only at the surface, then we are probably more aligned with the Western view. But the moment we get a little deeper into understanding what Indian way of life is, we already get into this symbolic mentality that everything is a symbol of something behind. So Radha existed or not, who cares? Rama existed or not, who cares? But there are billions and billions of people, I mean, at least millions and millions of people who swear by what Rama represents in their life, or what Sita represents in their life, or what Radha means to them. So, the fact of history don't matter. The symbolic meaning what has changed, people, it has been a transforming force. So, I mean, there is a reason why we have these things now, Ramayan circuit trains and all these things, because people want to keep going to the same spots wherever our literature says Ram's feet touched, right? So we have created these feet out of these places. So, I mean, you have to admire this mindset that does it like that. So there is still, I think, a fundamental difference, because we have connected it with life, day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And that part is not there so much at least in the popular majority Western, But at the same time, I also want to say what Mother reminds, East and West, I mean, or Indian or Western, we are not talking about bodies born in India or bodies born in the West. It's a mindset. So you can be born anywhere in whatever, with whatever skin tone, and yet have that internal mindset which will make you Indian in a way, right? And you could be living all your life in India and still be very Western in your approach.
I thought, because I was thinking about when I listened to, I'm just, because Western came. So it is not only West we talk about any other than the Indian. That is the way it came to my mind. So, like, for example, Sufi performance, right? So it is totally different.
Yeah.
Though audience may not get into that because they are also performing, just, dance I'm talking about. Maybe, I may not be connect because I'm not open to that particular, way of doing dance, and I'm able to connect with because I'm familiar with this, our way of doing dance, whether it is Odissi or Bharatnatyam, because from childhood I've seen, some other way I've seen. As you rightly said that every, program we start with Bharatnatyam or Odissi or something like that. So I'm familiar, that is why I'm able to connect easily. But the whosoever is experienced Sufism, we cannot say it is, they are less spiritual, or I'm just, I thought of, I just connected you when you were talking about Western. I thought of, how they experience the way we are experiencing or something different. Because Sufism, again, very different kind of, I mean, that performance of Sufi Dance is
I
very different.
completely agree. Sufism is very spiritual, but when we say West, I completely agree because I love Sufi music too. And there are a few things which just, it will make you, it will just transcend you to some place else. But you'll have to think in this way. So, I mean, in terms of West, when we keep saying West, take the popular, the continent, the America, Europe, and the Europe Union and UK. If you take this continents, we say it is not the same because the idea of the lifestyle is very different. America, we are talking about a capitalist country where spiritualism is a very, very, you make money out of spiritualism. Spiritualism is a very bigger concept to make money in the West, and you can make money with spiritualism. And I think even from people from India do come all the way here to sell spiritualism only. And I get questions when they see me, and I don't dress up like this when I go out. I don't have big earrings. They ask me if I am a Hindu. I say, no, I'm very spiritual. And because the problem here is it is associated with a religion if one follows. And even if they go to church, not everyone goes to church. Even in US also, not everyone goes to church like Indian Christians where they go to church in mornings. On a Sunday morning, there is a mass. No, it's not a culture like that. The culture there is very different. And spirituality, as Beluji was saying, spirituality for us is embedded in our work of life, in our way of life. Either you go to temple, you don't go to temple, either you worship something, either you're an atheist. It doesn't matter to us. We are spiritual at the end of the day. Something or the other will trigger that to think beyond our understanding. Or else life itself in India is like that, whereas we all are threaded in a way of belief system where there is something very beyond us. Whereas the westernized idea of, if we have to talk in terms of, we have to understand in terms of where the faith comes in from the country itself. We are talking about a capitalist country. We are talking about a colonized country who have taken power from people who have colonized the majority of the world. And they talk about spiritualism. And we are talking about Europe Union, where Portugal, Spain had colonized the majority of the world again. And we have our footprints. We have their footprints in our country. And when we speak about their spirituality, it's not about their spirituality. They don't have it. They don't know what is it to be spiritual only in the first place. They don't, because it's not there in their DNA. It's not there. It's very far-fetched for them. If they have to understand spirituality, I'll tell you this, they have to understand spirituality. There'll be two things in the West. Either they'll be a hippie or they'll do drugs, which is very common in the Western culture. If you see them, they'll have to be a hippie. They'll be dressed in such a way because they think they'll have Shiva photos on the dress, and they'll have this orange color, all these kinds of colors, which is very, very Indian, or orange or yellow, and all those kinds of colors. And recently I found someone, he's not a hippie, he's a very good father, but he had a Shiva photo on the t-shirt. I asked, do you know who he is? He said, yeah, but he has no clue about who he was. But he liked it. He liked the t-shirt. He liked the philosophy behind whatever was sold to him. He had got it. But that's how it is. If they don't know where the spirituality is, where to look for it. That's why most Western people, when they come to India and learn yoga, they learn the chanting, they get so into it and they transform themselves to be Indian. That's why, even this you can associate with the Auroville community too, Beluji. When they come and they embrace the whole Indianness, because they go even way beyond us. Even we don't do certain things that they do. They do way beyond our own understanding. They embrace it because it's not available here. And when something new is exotic, they take it very exotic. We are seen as exotic birds for now when it comes to spirituality or our dress code, especially when we dress up in Bharatnatyam costume with flowers and, big jimkis and all that. We are very exotic. And the criticism we get are like, I love your dress. And we would be like, so not my performance, just my dress. So you have to educate yourself more. That's where I become so irritated when they exoticize our own appearance, because it's common for us, whereas it's not for them. And they have to educate themselves about it. And we are not here to educate, and we are not here to sell our spirituality, because it is ours, right? At the end of the day, this is mine. I'm not going to just like that give you and say, okay, take it, you own it. No, it's mine. You can take it, use it, but leave it there and go away. You're not owning it. This is not the West to own it. It's mine to take it. And I'm very staunch in that. Even the art form or any of my practices, I'm happy to share, but you can't own it. I'm very, very happy to share because I strongly believe that we are all same at the end of the day. We are just divided by borders, but we are all same. But will they be okay if I just say that, okay, this is mine and we take something of theirs? Will they be okay? The Westerners will not be okay. So why should we give our something that we believe in strongly, which we nurture so much in our day-to-day lifestyle, and everything for that matter, from spirituality to the idea of religion to the literature, everything we tend to have a hold to it. But we have a capacity of giving too much. And finally, when they take it, we be like, oh my God, they have taken it. And then we cry out loud. But I'm very, very, whenever I speak with my community of friends, and we have a multicultural, we are part of multicultural hub here. I say these things. I say, you can use it. I'm happy to share my art form. I'm happy to teach you my art form, but you can't own it. You can't say you're opening a Bharatnatyam class. No, you can't say that because you don't know what you're doing at the end of the day. And it would be inappropriate. There's a question of cultural appropriation which comes in with this. How it is appropriate for a Westerner to teach yoga in the first place? How can they teach when they don't understand what it is yoga, even if they have learned it from an Indian guru? How it is possible for them to even teach it just because they can bend more than an Indian guru? No, right? That fundamental understanding should be too much, right? We have to own it, right? But I don't see it. So yeah, that's where my understanding is. Spirituality is very, very, very different in the West because they don't know.
So you are opening a lot of interesting questions, Krishnapriya. And I think we'll probably have to bring you back to address some of these questions. I see Vrindaji smiling, and maybe she has some comment or question that she would like to quickly chime in here, please.
Thank you, Beluji. This is the first session that I was able to join, after many days, and it was a very interesting discussion on two counts. One, because I finally had a chance to start to read Foundations of Indian Culture with my children. You see, it was a book that we were privileged. Mother had given to my father on one of his birthdays in the ashram. And for many years, I don't know why, it is like you have these, as you said, blockages, you don't know. And then one day, suddenly you open a book and then you're able to read. There was no reason why we didn't read in all these days, but there was a moment that came where the children were studying Indian culture. And that actually got me to read because they had to make a presentation around the epics. So what is it that would be different that, we as a family who's associated with Sri Aurobindo and Mother, what could we actually contribute to a class discussion of, 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old children? And it was so clear in some of those essays, and how Sri Aurobindo has compared different literature, different forms from art, and then where the essence, and keep drawing us to the essence of Indian literature, Indian art, which is spiritual. And, a lot of that has been relayed through conversation and dialogue this morning for us. And I think the other thing which I'll call out, which is remarkable to observe in the conversation is, when Mother says that, or at least the way I interpret it, is you have one aspect which is around your inner progress, yourself, and how you progress. So what your opening is, and everyone has a different channel of opening, which is their strength. It can also become your weakness if you don't, keep yourself open, continue to keep yourself open on it. But if that is your receptive channel to absorb and open to the higher force, then maybe, then this is one way to look at how art can open up for you. And the second is to create a system of collaboration, which is beyond any boundaries, beyond any prejudices, and all of us have a chance to grow and transform from what we may have, been born with, I will say, or absorbed along the way. And that collaboration that, can be created within a community to include more and more people into this movement, if you will, so that we can hasten that collective progress. I think that is how, I see that. And I live in the US, so I have the privilege of seeing both now the Western world and, having grown up from the Eastern. And it has been always, it was, sometimes you have these light bulb moments when you read one or two lines or somewhere, and then something interprets, you clicks for you what, maybe you are looking for at that moment. And that whole aspect of East and West shaking hands and collaborating, we who are now here have that, I will say, we have that responsibility in some ways of enabling that handshake. And, whatever it may be, because at the end of the day, every culture is unique. And once we realize that strength of that culture, that is when the harmony or the dance really will take to that, next level, I would say. So I would, like to keep that my own mind open, that, I would not say that we all come from a certain background or a certain level or a platform. And then how we keep improving is really what it is. We could be born with something, but we may waste that gift if we don't use it. So these are some of my feelings and thoughts which came up from today's conversation. So I really thank you all, because you all brought up so many aspects. We've all seen, so many things. You talked about folk, Kiranji, folk music, folk dance, Sufism. And, whenever we travel, it may be, Turkey, it may be France, it may be, India. There is just a joy of being connected with nature. There is a joy of, thinking what has these people contributed to the world progress in different ways. And they have all contributed to where we are today. So it's always a moment of, feeling gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is really powerful, because I think at the end of the day, as you said, we have to be centered somewhere and yet be open enough to every, like the way Rig Veda says, let noble thoughts come from everywhere. So that's with that openness, that spirit, we have to go. And I think integral yoga, Sri Aurobindo Mother's yoga, I mean, the beautiful coming together of East and West. I mean, there can be nothing better than that in the coming of Sri Aurobindo and the mothers. So yes.
All in her pointed to a nobler kind.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I think Krishnapriya, you really instigated a lot of reflection process. So we have gone way beyond time, but thank you so much. And maybe we'll have another session at some point. We'll be in touch. So to carry on, Kiranji.
Thank you. I think Krishnapriya, I'm really thankful that, you discussed so openly, and it triggered me so many questions, which helped me in researching rather, whether I need to check, how. And Brindaji's, I think with Brindaji's comment, it is right time to, stop because she has brought that, what is sthirta?
Yes.
So that is a beautiful, Brindaji. Thank you so much. Binduji, yes, I think I would request Krishnapriya that Binduji has commented that, next time little performance is needed.
Sure.
So
Definitely.
you are still, invited by the audience, what we have here, to see your performance. Performance in the sense, whatever the way you can, demonstrate.
Sure.
Yes. And also maybe next time talk a little bit about your background and interest in martial art, because that's again a very,
Sure.
uncharted territory that we could.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
that reminds me, Beluji, when I was reading her profile, she has written that therapy also.
Art therapy.
So I'm very curious. So I think there are so many khajana with you. So treasure, we want to
Yes.
explore much more. So whenever you are ready, please share with us.
Thank you. Definitely. That's a very big word. I'm still in the process of reading a lot and understanding my own art form and my own idea behind where I am, what I'm doing, how art can be everything in terms of bettering me as well as the work that I do with the community I am. And living in States and being here, that's given me that perspective of art form in a very different sense too. And thank you so much for being that open and receiving everything that I shared. And thank you, thank you, Beluji, for the opportunity. And thank you for the lovely questions. Thank you, everyone. Vrindaji, Binduji, thank you, Vaijanti, Sudha Devi. So thank you, everyone, for coming today and being a part of making this a good afternoon for me.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, everyone.